Hello all you murderous cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic, and today we're going to be reviewing Dead by Daylight, which is a multiplayer 4 versus 1 horror game, asymmetrical of course, developed by Behaviour Interactive and published by Starbreeze Studios. Now, it was a game that came out earlier in the year and I didn't really look at or touch at the time. It did interest me, but it was something that I didn't have time to review, and it just recently had a free weekend on Steam, so I thought what a perfect time to pick it up because there'll be a ton of people on there to play with and take a look at the game. Now, upon its launch, Dead by Daylight of course had multiple technical issues and it was plagued with bugs and problems with the multiplayer connectivity, etc. So I had hoped by this point those issues for the most part had been ironed out. So for those who are unaware how Dead by Daylight works, it's a very simple game. It centers around a map where 4 survivors face off against 1 serial killer, and the purpose of the survivors is to fix a certain amount of generators that are dotted around the map, and which will give power to the gates that they can escape through. And the purpose of the serial killer is to, of course, kill everybody before they do that. And it's a fairly simple premise, and mechanically and gameplay wise it is also fairly simple. The survivors can do very little in terms of abilities. They can fix these things, they can hide in cupboards, and that's all basically they can do. They can just run and hide and try not to get caught. The serial killer, on the other hand, there are multiple killers to choose from, each with different abilities and different play styles. So the Wraith is going to play very differently from the Hillbilly, which was my favourite because he had a giant hammer and a chainsaw, and chainsaws are really scary and cool, and that was my thing. I found that I was a terrific serial killer, mainly because of my British cold distantness, I suppose. People really didn't like how good I was at being the serial killer, and a lot of people rage quit because of it. But you know, I'm just doing my job. What can I say? It kind of disturbed me a little bit of how good of a serial killer I actually was, to the point where I had to stop playing the game because I felt like it was going to suddenly turn me into a real life serial killer. But I digress. I enjoyed the game for the most part, at least at the start. The simplicity of the mechanics, the simplicity of the core concept was fun. And the problem was it had no longevity because it was so simple. And it's certainly a game that when I played public multiplayer games, I had fun playing as the killer. I had less fun playing as the survivor. But for the most part, both roles were enjoyable in some form. The problem was that the game became very repetitive very quickly, and I'm talking maybe after 3 matches I was bored, even with the amount of progression that they've put in for both survivors and killers. So you are able to accrue in-game currency that you can spend on various consumable items that will give you survivors, for example, better luck, or killers can go on you can burn these cards to spawn a specific map to go on, but there's nothing really in there that is considered, I would say, game-changing in terms of how the game is played and how the mechanics play out in the game. It's all very minute changes that will affect a few statistics but won't really affect major gameplay loops, and so it still remains repetitive. And for me, while that isn't necessarily a bad thing because a lot of multiplayer games are repetitive. I mean, I absolutely love Titanfall 2's multiplayer. I frequently return to Titanfall 2's multiplayer even when it's the same game. All I'm doing is shooting people, dropping in a Titan, and then shooting more people. But for me, it became very stale very quickly. And this was helped by when I got a group of friends and we played a private server, and it is certainly a game that I feel is most enjoyable late at night when you have a group of friends in, say, Discord or TeamSpeak, and you can all have a laugh late at night. But it's certainly nothing that I would play frequently over and over. But this isn't my biggest issue with the game. My biggest issue with the game is the fact that it is still extremely buggy. The controls have not been refined at all, so it still feels a little bit clunky in places. Loading times are still horrendous, and the fact that there are multiple animation and visual glitches in there. Your connectivity problems are still apparent. You still get dropped from games frequently or have connectivity issues in some form. And these issues that were complained about at the very start are still in the bloody game. It's a shame really, because I really adore the core concept of this game, and I think for the most part the game is a positive game overall. However, when you still have problems that have been present since its launch and you have not patched those issues out, for me, that's showing that you don't really care about improving the quality of life for your players in that game. And that for me is just unacceptable. On top of the fact that I feel that the game is very repetitive for a lot of people and it's going to put a lot of people off. The fact that the UI menus at the main menu are problematic. They don't really have a good tutorial in the game whatsoever, so you kind of get thrown into the thick of it without knowing what the hell to do. And there's only one game mode, and there's only ever one objective. There's no real variety in anything what you're doing. And for me, while the survivors are fun to play, and the game is still an asymmetrical game, the problem is it's not a strong asymmetrical game, because the survivors don't do anything unique. What would have been really interesting is to have each survivor do a specific task in that team, and so that every survivor needs to do that specific task in order to complete certain objectives. And that for me would have made the game a lot more tense, a lot more interesting, a lot more varied, and far less repetitive. Overall, Dead by Daylight is a good game at its core. It's got a good solid core concept. The execution is a little bit wobbly at times. The technical state of the game, while it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, i.e. your Space Hulk Deathwing, I think that there's no reason why a lot of these issues should still be in the game so many months after its launch, and that for me is highly disturbing and shows a lack of care by the developers themselves. That being said, if you are interested in the game and this looks like something that would be right up your alley, I would recommend that you wait for a sale or wait for another free weekend. It's certainly worth picking up at a lower price, like maybe $5, $6 to $10. I would not pay anything more than that. I wouldn't pay the $15 to $20 asking price at its full price. Certainly would not pay that, especially for the fact that I would argue for most people it will be something you play for a day or two and then get bored really easily. You're not going to get your money's worth there, so certainly pick it up in a sale if you are interested. If it's something that you're on the fence about, I would say probably either pick it up in a sale or perhaps just not pick it up at all, or at least do more research into the gameplay before you make your final decision. So that is my review of Dead by Daylight. Thank you so much for watching and listening. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, subscribe, and as always, I will see you next time.